Indira Christie, thank you for being here today. You are a marketer, an entrepreneur, and a woman leader in New Canaan. We're so happy to have you here to talk about all of these interesting things.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the beginning. Where did you grow up, and tell me a little bit about your family life as a young person?
I grew up in upstate New York. I come from a very traditional family. My father is Indian and my mother is European Spanish, so a very traditional family. I'm one of four. I am the second in line, the first girl, so I was super responsible. I'm mom number two, as I'm still often called, by my youngest brother. And I was followed by another sister and then my youngest brother.
And where did you go to college?
I went to Wellesley College. During my formative years, and our family life was always focused on education and house responsibilities, actually, in that order. And for all of us, education and where you were going to proceed after high school was important. And I went to Wellesley College, all-women's school. I kind of followed my older brother to Massachusetts. He was at MIT at the time. And I spent my 4 years there, worked a couple years, and then went to Kellogg Business School in
Tell me a
Northwestern.
little bit about your experiences at Wellesley. You did some sports, you had some great experiences in the educational side. Tell me a little bit about some of those things.
So Wellesley was amazing. People think about all women's schools and they immediately, some people turn off when they think of it as all women's. Oh my gosh, I don't have a social life. What would that be really like? Wellesley was amazing in that you were able to not only express yourself in the classroom, but you're supported by professors and local communities that allow you to continue your path of interest and actually push you forward.
When you were at Wellesley, you started something business-oriented. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so while I was at Wellesley, I worked at basically a student co-op. It was a coffee shop called L Table. Started as a table literally by the elevator in 1904. That progressed and it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. When I started at Wellesley, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And after the experience of L Table, I decided I wanted to go into business. I grew that business by threefold by expanding not only its product offerings, but its constituents. It had started only as a place for professors to run in, grab a cup of coffee or a really bad sandwich at that time, and then zip off to class. And by the time we were done, we had totally changed up the food offerings. We changed up the marketing of it. It was hard to find. We got people to find it. And it was just amazing and so motivating to see not only the visual results, but the financial results.
That is so great. And you played a lot of sports at school there.
I did, and at high school I was a gymnast and a soccer player, and at Wellesley I pursued soccer and played D3, which at the time was pretty amazing because we were one of the first all-women soccer teams. So we were fighting for space, field space, and time, and finding other all-woman teams was also could be challenging at that time. Yeah.
When did you decide to go to business school? And tell us a little bit about where you were.
So business school became a thought through the L Table process. Seeing that result, it was just so fun. And so amazing. And so actually, while I was at Wellesley, I took 1 year of business school at the MIT Sloan School of Management as an undergrad. And as I was looking at business school in totality, I thought about, well, what do you really want to do? Which part of this do you love the most? And for me, it was marketing and consumer marketing specifically. And Kellogg Northwestern is the #1 school for that in the country. So off I went after 2 years in consulting.
And you had a really interesting career. Take me through it.
So people, when they start out in careers, they often think, this is what I want to be, and it's a straight line forward. And that's not typically what happens. And actually, in reality, you hope that that's not the way it happens because you grow through different experiences. I started out, again, as a consultant right out of college, working for one of the largest consulting firms. And then it was a 2-year program, so went to business school for marketing and worked for 2 major CPG companies, Kraft Foods as it was known back then, and in the Maxwell House division, and then also Bristol Myers Squibb in their consumer products division.
What was it like working there, and were there other women colleagues?
So in both cases, yes, there were other women colleagues, but they were mainly at the same level of management. The top level of management is typically men.
And did you have a good experience at both of those companies?
Both of them were amazing, and they were different in many ways. Maxwell House division is a powerhouse in coffee, and it's a very much a commodity-driven business, and so it was fun to come up with different types of coffee blends and different ways to get consumers excited about coffee. Fast forward, we have Starbucks everywhere, and everyone's excited about coffee, and at that time it wasn't necessarily the case. Bristol Myers Squibb, I introduced Carrie baby lotion. I worked on Excedrin. That was also a lot of fun. And by the time I actually left, I was heading up women's healthcare to bring in different RX to OTC products onto the market.
Did you have any women mentors in college or in your business life?
I would, because women were not typically at the highest level of management, I would say women played more of a role of camaraderie. It was more on a support role. My mentors were in the business setting were mainly men. However, my parents played a huge role in how I grew and what I ended up doing.
When you decided to move to New Canaan, what were some of the factors that drew you here?
So New Canaan was a journey, as it is for many people who come here. You start in New York City and work in the city, and for us, we moved to Greenwich, and then we made the trek out to New Canaan, which, by the way, is not that far out as some people think it is. And for me, New Canaan was all about the school systems initially. But as I got to know the people, it was also this incredible blend of people who are smart, intelligent, yet love a town feeling, and everybody embraces the concept of open space and community. And that's really what's special about New Canaan.
How many children do you have, and were they raised here in town?
I have 2 children. I have a daughter, Anjali, and a son, Ryan. And they were raised here in town, went through the school systems, and it's been really great for them. And you know you did something right when both of them have now said to me how lucky they were to have been raised in New Canaan, and someday they hope that they can return.
What are some of the favorite things about New Canaan that you love?
I love the Christmas lights. Around Christmas time, the town turns into this magical storybook town. Love that. I love the special events that they carry on, which stretches everything from endorsements and support for, let's call one of the latest ones, mental illness or drug abuse, to support programs for local communities and businesses such as the sidewalk sale.
Indira, what are some of the challenges that you faced as a woman getting into business?
Women getting into business is very different experience versus men getting into business. It actually starts at the business school level, where when I went to business school, 1 in 10 were women. So right off the bat, you were working harder, talking louder to be heard. Once you enter the business world, one of the struggles is that there were no female mentors at the higher level. You really depended on either a male mentor or your female counterparts to discuss problems and problem solve. As you go on through your career, and if you choose to have children, a struggle is, what do you do? Often that decision making happens when you are potentially in the uprise or height of your career, which is the childbearing years. And during my time, there was very short maternity leave. There certainly was no option to have flex time or work from home. So that became a huge issue, and one that I experienced after I had my first and second child.
And what did you do? Did you go back to work?
I did go back to work. Went back to work the moment I could, and this would be after I accumulated all my vacation days because the maternity leave was so short. So I did go back to work. I was lucky because I was at the point in my career financially that we could afford live-in help, so that made it easier. And I have a husband who is very well ensconced in his career, so from a financial perspective, I was able to do that. But there are many women out there, even today, that are still struggling with short maternity leaves and maybe in a different type of business position or level and may not have the money to afford good health care or child care.
And what about the challenges for you as a woman entrepreneur?
So as we know, there are more men entrepreneurs than female entrepreneurs. And so it is a challenge. If you are looking to get funding for your business, men unfortunately dictate where those funds go. And so as a woman, you have to present your data, present your company profile in a much more aggressive manner than you would for women. The good news is today there are a number of startups in a number of places that women can go to for funding from women-based fund groups. But for me, it was difficult when it came to selling the product in, because you're talking to, in the shoe business, primarily men. And men need to understand that a woman can bring this company forward, doesn't have to have a man behind her. So that was a bit of a challenge.
Tell us a little bit about your business that you have online.
Way back when, about 2007, I introduced Rip-A-Wear. And Rip-A-Wear is a footwear company. And actually the concept behind it was based on me looking at the way kids wore their inappropriate flip-flops after sports. Both of my children were athletes and still are athletes. And I thought, well, someone should develop a shoe that is appropriate for after ice hockey, after lacrosse. And I started designing and developing a sandal, a sports sandal. And over time, one thing led to the other, and it mainly because of my background in new product development, I've developed and patented the first collection, and then 2 years later, the second collection, and today there are 3 collections.
So how's business?
Business is really great. COVID has changed the nature of business for so many companies. For Rip-A-Wear, it is a leisure sandal, so it has actually benefited from this new environment because people are no longer wearing business shoes as they're working from home. However, I will say that there has been challenges in this new environment for small companies. As the big companies move away from box stores and retail, they are all spending all their advertising money in digital. So that forces the smaller companies like Rip-A-Wear to have a much bigger challenge in there to get share of voice.
You're a busy woman raising a family, working in the community as well as in a business sense. How do you balance everything?
It's hard. Anyone who says it's easy, it's just not true. It's really hard. You have to be disciplined and take segments of time and say, okay, this is my time for me. This is my time to work out. This is my time at home with my kids. And this is my time, often a bigger piece, for work.
Do you have some advice for young women coming out of college now, going into the business world? Any suggestions or tips that you wish you may have wanted to know back then?
Women and men who come out of business school often are pushed to decide immediately, what career should I go into? And once I make that decision, there's no turning back. And actually, that's not the way it works. I encourage women to pursue an area that they, A, are very interested in, and B, have had some experience in. It's very hard to start over as a college graduate. So leverage those skills that you already had, leverage the interest, leverage where you have been able to succeed, and often where you're happy and where you've succeeded come together. And take that first job. It might not be the perfect job, and this is for men or women, but take the job, get the experience, learn from it, and then you can fine tune as you go along the way.
With that said, is there any advice you can offer up to women early in their career?
Yes, have conviction. Be confident in what you want to do or what you want to communicate. And don't back down. And there's a way to do that, and there's a way not to do that. And the way to do that is with facts and homework. Understand what you're trying to get across, understand what you're offering, and let that be known. It can be communicated in many different ways, but often a mistake is that there is a push to be known, but there's no substance behind it. And substance is required to be able to effectively communicate your ask, your want, or your new job position.
There's a lot of data around how men and women approach interviews differently. What are your thoughts there?
Women need to understand what skill sets they bring to the table and have the confidence to understand that they can grow within those skill sets. That yes, they may not have that one thing right now, but they do have the ability to bring it to the table. And men tend to do that much better than women. Women need the confidence to say that they can do it and then proceed to do it. If that means staying up later at night and studying coding, do it. You'll get the job.
What do you think women are better at than men in the business world?
There's a couple things. Women in general are much better at multitasking, and that spreads across all areas of life for women. And in the business world, multitasking is very important. I also feel that women excel in empathy. They excel in being able to understand the other point of view, more so, I believe, than men. I think that in consumer marketing, women can take the other position and kind of grasp what that mother for a baby product would be feeling, or what a migraine headache would be, and what would be the kind of results they'd want out of a ibuprofen pill. So I think women are much better in that regard. The other piece that they're also much better at is assessing a room, coming into a conference room and taking the temperature, trying to understand where people are coming from.
When you were building your own business, did you have a roadblock where you had to pivot pretty severely to get success? Any stories there?
Yeah, actually, this is a really interesting story. Our entire line is manufactured in China, as most shoe companies are. And in fact, there's a whole district in China that is all shoe industry. When it came to a point that the Chinese counterpart, the manufacturer, would not listen, actually, I would have to write the email and have my husband send it, because he would not listen to a certain point. And this is digitally. There's no visual here. It was all in the name. And that just talks directly to what happens to women. And in this case, it was with a Chinese counterpart. And that's very difficult. I'm writing the emails, he's sending them.
Wow, that is so interesting. What are the traits of a great leader?
There are three really important ones. One is the vision, knowing where you want to go, whether it's within a group or it's a country. The second is conviction, following it through with humility. And the third is passion, energizing not only yourself, but energizing people around you. And I'd actually add in a fourth, which is character. Character, honesty, and humility in the execution of how you lead and communicate.
Who are some of the female leaders that you admire?
There are a number from different types of fields. The obvious one that just came up, obviously, is Ruth. But others are Mother Teresa, completely different world. She had a vision and she had conviction in what she wanted to do. And she motivated people around her through her passion. She was passionate about helping people to the point that she let go of everything around her. I think she was amazing. I also believe that we have a number of women leaders in foreign countries that have done very well in motivating their country, and moving their country forward. An obvious one was Indira Gandhi.
We are here today because we're celebrating a 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, women's rights to vote. When was the first time you voted? Do you remember?
As soon as I could. I was a political science major, so the minute I was able, I voted.
And if you were born back 100 years or so ago, would you be involved with the movement back then, do you think?
I totally would have been involved with the movement. I feel so strongly about women's rights. My parents felt strongly about women's rights. My mother always pushed us, meaning my sister and I, to be independent, to go for the top that you can go. My father, who comes from a very traditional culture, India, also pushed his daughters and also said, you should be and can be everything you want. So this is all part of my DNA. And the historical component as well is that, my family on the Indian side fought for independence along with Gandhi. So I definitely would have been one of them.
What gives you hope?
There are a number of things that give me hope. One is the way, in this case, women are reacting to experiences they've had in the workplace. It started with the Me Too movement, which really exploded and uncovered the inequalities that women have been facing. And it's across all industries, whether it's female dominated or not. Now we see a lot of different types of things going on with regard to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This gives me hope that women are standing up and saying they're resolved to make sure that her work doesn't get discounted, that her work continues. I hope that the activism actually translates to action. What else gives me hope is that we're starting to see more female CEOs. We have a long way to go. Only 7.4% of top Fortune 500 companies have female CEOs, of which only 3 are women of color. It will take time, but there is resolve, and there are initiatives, especially in traditionally male-dominated companies, to try to bring more women at the top level. It gives me hope that they're making that effort. I'd like to see it translated.
Indira, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was fascinating to hear about your life, and we appreciate you being a woman leader in New Canaan.
Thank you so much for having me.